One of the things that is interesting about Houston is we have a lot of firsts. So, for real estating, which of these innovations was first tested in Houston before it became standard in real estate nationwide? Paige, we're going to find some of the OGs for real estate in here in Houston. One, was it instant property alerts via text message?
Maybe.
Number two, was it virtual 360 home tours? Option number three, was it drone photography for listings? Or was it electronic document signatures? I think we're going to have the vote up in just a second. But for all of our realtors here, what was first tested in Houston before it became standard nationwide? Paige, my guess is you lived through this. You lived through the development of these.
I sure did. I sure did. All right, have we voted?
Ready for the answer?
Yeah, let's do it.
The answer is D, electronic document signatures, thanks to NASA. NASA and its signal transmissions help make Houston one of the first, and that is what the majority of the group answered correctly. So congratulations.
Smart, smart. I remember when this happened. This was life-changing. Y'all, for those of you who are new to real estate, before DocuSigns, we had a thing called a scanner and a fax machine. And also, option periods didn't expire at 5 p.m. They expired at 11:59 p.m. So at 10 p.m., when you were needing to make sure you had everything signed, done, and sent back, you were scanning paperwork, praying that the fax went through. This was revolutionary in my business, and I actually was able to do so much more business because of it.
Although it did lead to something else, right?
Yeah.
A lot of
And
people on their phones all the time. Great signs.
Yep, yep, yep. So I think you're going to find that the theme today is going to be signs. Signs, everywhere are signs. And there's some things we specifically want to highlight for you as we go through this presentation.
So there's a tremendous amount of data from the Fed. So let's dive into that. From We want to make sure that you go back to the three things that matter the most in real estate. Again, a lot of noise, but if you simplify it, it's three things. Number one is the price of homes. Number two is the cost of money. And
Interest rate.
number three is employment. The reason that we keep bringing this back up is when you have clients that give you a lot of news, this is a really easy framework to bring everything back to what matters to them. And when we look at the data, we've got some really fancy charts, and we're going to simplify them for you. But you know I love charts. This data shows the median home prices. New is in red line, so new construction homes, and blue is existing. And I want you to notice two big things out of this graph that will matter for you and your clients. Number one, as we've talked about a bit, is the price of homes keeps rising, right? It is more expensive to buy homes than it has been before. The second thing that's really interesting to note is that the red line and the blue line now are close together. And when you think about buying a car, right, you go to a car dealership, you buy a new car, usually you pay more for the new car than you would for a used car. This is one of the few times in the last 25 years where new home prices are approximately the same and in some cases cheaper than existing home prices. We're going to talk more about that in a second, but that is a really interesting trend line that is important for you and your clients to know.
That's exactly right. So for those of you who have listings in resale neighborhoods that do compete with new construction, kind of the rule of thumb for buyers is if I can choose new or used and they're both the same price, well, of course I want the new. And so that's why for resale in these areas, your sellers need to get aggressive with how they're positioning in the market.
Related to the cost of money, as we know, mortgage rates have been higher. They've been relatively consistent, but bump around over the last year. And also the spread between treasuries and mortgage rates, right? The risk that people have to buy mortgages is still near a high for the last 25 years. When we look at employment, I want to highlight a couple things out of this. Ultimately, green is good. This is the amount of job gains since COVID, and notice that Texas has been one of the leaders nationwide. That was part of our 2025 forecast that Houston would lead the nation because of our change in employment. When you look at that over a 1 year basis, also Texas has done very well, right? We are growing employment, and that has again been very good for Texas, very good for Houston.
I'll just point out for Kat when she's on, the only state that beat us is South Carolina.
South Carolina, faster job growth.
Hmm.
This is also one of the most interesting data points, and this brings a lot of things together to make it simple for you to have conversations with your clients about, right, what's really happened in 2025 with all the noise. At the end of last year, the Fed came out and they said, hey, we're going to make a guess of what 2025 was like. And again, the big guess was it's going to be about the same, right? So if you liked your business in 2024, you'll probably like your business in 2025. And what they said is that GDP, gross domestic product, or the household income of the nation was going to grow about 2.1%. And inflation, we're not exactly down to the 2% we want, but we're at 2.5%. That's what they said again late in 2024. In March of this year, they came out and they say, you know what? We think we're going to make a little less money, and we think inflation's going to rise a little bit faster than we thought. That's not a good sign. And then they came out this week and they said, I think the economy, it's going to not grow quite as much, and inflation's going to be even a little hotter than what we thought 3 months ago.
Huh.
The reason that this is so important is because this is your foundation for what has been happening in the news cycle, which means the Fed predicted to cut rates, but they said, we just don't know. We just don't think we're ready. And so they've waited.
And Bob, we don't have the jobs in here, but specifically, we are looking for inflation to be around what number? Uh,
2%.
2%. And we're looking for GDP to be about what number?
Also around 2 to 2.5%.
Got it. So we're not in those ranges. When we get in those ranges, that's the balance that the government wants us to have a healthy economy. So we're not quite there yet.
And Paige, I think the sign, or right, the sign of what real estate agents are looking for to help their clients is we want money to be cheaper. In order for money to be cheaper, inflation has to go down, not up.
Right.
And because over the last 6 months, the Fed said, we think inflation's going up. And then they said, we think it's going to go up again. The sign says it's unlikely we're going to get cheaper mortgage rates in the near future.
All right. That's
That's a
helpful
big
to know.
sign of what we're looking for. And so the signals to watch going forward, and right, this impacts your interest rate and your employment, right? There's two or three big factors, is tariffs. They are inflationary. And we're starting to see a bit of that come in the economy, which is what the Fed said this week. If they're like, I just don't think, guys, we can give you the cut that the president wants.
Mhm.
The other big thing to be looking for are wars, rumors of wars. We could spend the entire 30 minutes on the Israel-Iran conflict, but we're not going to because we've got so much local data. The biggest component to understand about that is that war or that rumor of war creates uncertainty. And big companies don't like uncertainty, which means they don't make big capital projects. They don't do a lot of hiring. And whenever there's that level of uncertainty, it impacts employment not in a positive way.
Right.
The other big signal to watch nationwide is oil prices, right? Oil prices are about 20, 25 cents a gallon cheaper nationwide than they were a year ago,
Which is great if you're driving for 4th of July.
which is the thing about oil prices on how Houston benefits more than the rest of the nation is about a third of our economy is tied to oil.
Mhm.
So when oil prices spiked over the last few weeks with the conflict in the Middle East, that's good for traders. That's good for a lot of Houston companies. And so, right, that helps employment. And so that's why it's a little bit of a mixed signal. Bad for the nation if it goes up, good for Houston. And so
Right.
again, it's complicated, but it's something to watch.
Right.
The other thing that's really interesting to watch is the impact that AI is having, especially on recent job layoffs. Microsoft announced thousands of job layoffs. Amazon today announced they're also going to stop cuts. One of the biggest things that we have seen recently is a friend of ours just graduated from Cornell. At Cornell, 53% of college graduates, they don't have a job.
That's an Ivy League school where they paid $400,000 for 4 years of education and 53% can't get a job. And most of them can't even get a job interview.
And a part of that, again, is due to all the factors above. Tariffs, I don't know. War, I don't know. I'm not going to make decisions. Also, a part of it is entry-level white-collar jobs being taken by AI. It's slowing things down. And so this is really important for people working with first-time home buyers because these are the type of trends that are impacting those individuals. And in addition, right, the more uncertainty that comes out with that daily breaking news from DC, the signal that you're looking for is it hurts again employment. And for interest rate, the Fed's like, we just can't cut because there's just too much noise out there.
Yeah.
Again, we could spend a whole 30 minutes on that, but we're not because we have so much that's important about Houston. And
Mhm.
so when you look at Houston and we look at how to make this tactical for you, there are a few big things to know. One of the biggest ones and one of the biggest signs to be looking for is the amount of active listings. Compared to last year, active listings are up by about a third. Paige, you want to talk about how that's such a big signal?
Well, keep going. And when you get to the third one, I will.
Okay, highest inventory since 2012. This is a huge deal for most real estate agents because they have not been in real estate for that long. So this is a new market that most real estate agents have not seen before ever in their career, which again creates fear and uncertainty. And notably, when listings go up and inventory goes up, prices typically decline. And May was the first time that we have actually seen that happen.
In a while. Yeah. And the next piece, Bob, the next bullet is we're talking about days on market. If we'll get to that slide. The signs here are this. You know those buyers who said, I just don't want to compete. I just don't want to buy at the top of the market. Well, we don't have a crystal ball, but we have indications that things are shifting. And when you have more inventory than you've ever had since 2012, you have higher days on market. You're seeing price reductions dramatically in terms of just the sheer volume of them. And you're seeing prices shrink just a tad. They're not falling off the cliff, but they're shrinking. This would be if I was sitting in my backyard waiting for my pecan tree to show me that it's spring. These are those little green bulbs that say we are moving into a really balanced buyer's market. So for your buyers, these are all very positive signs, especially given the time of year. Seasonality matters in our market, and I certainly have noticed in the past 5 years a shift. And I don't know if we're going to say it's climate change. I don't know what we're going to call it, but I don't know about you guys, but seeing 8 houses on a Sunday morning in August when it's hot and sticky is something that I only want to do as a buyer if I absolutely need to, right? Because it's hot and it's not fun. So when you start coupling seasonality with these other signs, for your buyers who have wanted some indication, this is a opportunity for you to show them the data and then let them make the decision that is right for them.
The next three bullet points are going to give you some talking points so you are smarter than the average realtor. The headline message that came out from HAR, single family home sales are up almost 7% from last May. Wow. In addition, the volume of home sales are up 5.6% from last May. That's the headline message that just came out of HAR. Why? Their answer was you have slightly lower home prices and you have mortgage costs that are slightly down, saving about $70 a month for your homeowner.
And that's valid and true. Like that.
Valid and true.
Yeah.
You, as the smart agent helping your client make wise decisions, you are also going to remind your client that last May we had the derecho, which put a pause at the back half of May real estate. So again, headline message, say, yay, we're up. You, when you talk to your client and they say, hey, I saw this headline that everything's up, you're like, yep, but also don't forget what happened last May.
Right. And we'll see the same thing, guys, happen in July when the July numbers come out because of the hurricane that we had.
It is. We have no idea, obviously, what's coming this summer storm-wise. Obviously, it's getting hot. It gives you just an opportunity to sound a little bit smarter than somebody just reading top of headlines. For inventory, the trend that we've been watching consistently every month has been there has been more inventory on the market. Notice that that speedometer is creeping closer and closer to 6, which is the balanced market. Most people in real estate on this call have not been in anything other than the red or the orange. Again, an extreme seller's market or a seller's market. So this is new territory.
Now, we say this every time, is that remember that real estate is hyper local. So this is the overall Houston market snapshot, but that may not be what's happening in Westview or certain parts of Memorial or certain parts of the Woodlands. We're not going to dive into that as much today because of the other content, but probably, Bob, next month we should take a deeper dive into those neighborhoods.
I love it. You're like, Paige, you're rushing through the federal overview and you're rushing through the Houston overview to get to the tactical things that I really want. Yes, that is exactly what we are doing. For price reductions, again, this is one of the most powerful graphs that you have for your clients. It shows not only are price reductions in Houston higher than they have been for in years past, but they are also growing. And so, again, in the past, this is one of your most powerful slides, especially for your sellers. This data is through today. And notice that trend line in the blue line, the 2025 data, is up to the right. That is the harbinger of what is coming. And this right here is your best signal for sellers of what they need to do to get themselves ahead of the market.
That's right.
Again, one of your single most powerful slides that you have. For pending sales data, again, it's a little bit all over the place from the last couple of years, given some of the storms. And you've got, again, natural seasonality with schools. That's, again, the pending data weekly. When you look at home sales monthly, again, the May line slightly higher than before. But when you look at this in context compared to the last 4 years, 2025 is still pretty darn similar to 2024,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You
Every
see,
month up a little.
yeah, you see some off, we're off a little bit in February, off a little bit in April. So it will balance out, but you're right. It's shaping up pretty similar to that yellow line.
We think the future is going to be something different for you, though. We'll talk about more of that in just a second. Home prices monthly, also, again, pretty darn consistent with where they've been before, plus or minus 1%.
Yeah.
Again, your key takeaways are price cuts, they're rising, right? More and more people. I can't stress enough that that should be one of the slides that you're almost carrying around anytime that you're dealing with sellers.
Mhm.
Also, more homes are hitting the market than ever before. Nationwide stat, this is the first time we have over 1 million homes on the market at any point in the last 8 years. Big component, especially for first-time home buyers, people entering their career, affordability is a huge problem, huge problem. Again, cost of capital is up, cost of homes are up, cost of insurance is up, cost of everything is up. And so the affordability for, again, your first-time home buyers is really rough. So be helping them connect with mortgage professionals to see what they can diligence.
Yeah, your first time home buyers are probably going to have to make more of a strategic plan. So meeting them early in the process. Also, remember student debt if they are carrying that, that's back on the table and can work against them when they're getting a mortgage. For the first time ever nationally, first time home buyers only make up 26% of the market. That's not a lot. And I just did an interview with KHOU, and I asked our team for some first time home buyers to be included in that. And it was very interesting to look at our own data to see that our first time home buyer population is also down. So these folks need and will buy, but we need to help them get to the place where they have taken the time to understand what that financial path is for and where that's going to lead them.
The market, again, is very complicated. And so I appreciate you educating yourself on what is going through the market at the federal level, at the local level, then again at the micro level. That means you are going to be ahead of the other competitive realtors that you're working with, which means you are giving better value to your clients.
That's right.
Again, watch the signs, watch the signals for what's coming. We can't stress that enough to help educate your sellers. And again, this is really a phenomenal opportunity for a buyer's market, something that most people have not lived through since 2012.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then you go to the really big question. Paige, this is a lot of data. What do I actually do with the data? How do I use this? How do I use this today?
Right. Well, you probably don't want to walk into somebody's office and say, I've got new data. You've got to make a decision, and here's what you have to do. That's really not a successful strategy. I know because I've tried it, so it doesn't. Don't do that. There are sort of three different types of questions that we want to get to in terms of themes. Bob, you want to go through these takeaways real quick, and then I'll get to the questions.
It is in the signals. We don't know if we're going to end up in a full buyer's market, but we're seeing the signs that we're headed in that direction.
Mhm.
For folks on the fence, right? These are the buyers that said, I'm not quite sure. They reached out a little while ago. This is the opportunity this week to go talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Go reach out to them, go get in dialogue for them. I know your question is what do I say? That's what's coming next. For sellers, honest, transparent data conversations. They need to know what's coming, right? You need to be the one to educate them so they're not blindsided of why their house isn't selling. And for buyers, again, this is your moment.
Mhm.
Okay, so what do you say, right? What is the vision that you are helping these buyers understand?
Well, so we're going to kind of go through three different ways to think about this: vision questions, clarifying questions, and trade-off questions. And the first part, Bob, if you want to just throw up all the questions so we can kind of chat through them collectively, you want to help your clients get back to what is their big goal, right? So if you're meeting with them for the first time, or you've met with them, but you know what? We're not exactly where they said they wanted to be. We need to get back to what is their goal. And the question that I love the most is, especially when you're meeting them for the first time, if we're sitting here a year from now, Bob, what would your life look like? And then that's going to unfold some things, and your goal is to listen to what they say. Take notes of what they say so you can clarify what that vision looks like. And for those of you who've been working with somebody and maybe things have gotten off track or we're not reaching their goals because for some reason, what happens is their vision changes, but they may forget to tell you. It's natural. It just happens. They go home and have what we call pillow talk, and you're still thinking about the townhome that they said that they wanted, and you don't understand why the change. So it's good to have a reset. And the question that you'd say is something along the lines of, well, when you started looking, what was your original goal? Well, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, what's changed for you since then? Well, we just found out that my wife is pregnant and then I'm getting a job transfer to Katie. And we didn't really want to mention it because we're not far enough along in the pregnancy, but it seems like it's relevant. And that's why we're starting to look in Katie and not Midtown. Oh, well, that's helpful information, right? Now you can help them recast what they need to do in the right way. So, getting them back, what is the big goal? What is the vision? How are you helping them build their life? That's what these questions are for.
And
The
this gives you a phenomenal opportunity to reach out this week to help them dream, right? To help them have the vision of if everything goes well in your life in a year from now, what does your life actually look like?
next.
Okay, so if you talk about the vision, you reach that out,
Yeah.
what do you do next? Because most people have muddled minds.
Yeah. And so, Bob, if you'll just throw all those questions up there of the next rounds of those, is when you let them dream, which is what they need to do, right? You are a counselor and you're letting them talk through this out loud because in the discussion piece, they're going to come to some realizations that they may not even have. So after that, we're dreaming and we're getting from the vision, then we want to help them clarify. How can we help them reach that vision that they have? So my favorite one is great. So Bob, I get it. You've got a new baby on the way, and your job is transferring. So now you think you want to look in Katie. What has to happen for you to establish a life out there? Right. So now we're getting into some more tactical things that they're going to think through. Um, you know, one of the other questions I always love using is, okay, well, if you called your best friend right now, what advice would they give you? Right? So you're getting them to think about how to clarify their goals, tying to the vision. And then from there, once the conversation unfolds, and again, please remember this is a conversation. You are just a vehicle to help them get to where they need to be on the freeway, right? And so the trade-off questions, after you go through clarifying moments, is what matters most to them. Bob, you want to throw those questions up as, if yeah, okay, great. So you want to move to Katie. We've talked about what needs to happen there. And what you've said to me, Bob, in that dialogue is that you want to be there by the end of the summer, but you want a really great deal. You don't want to feel like you overpay, right? That's reasonable. To which I might very much ask you, okay, both of those are very reasonable. But if you had to choose between saving time or saving money, what's more important to you now? And then that will uncover where they want to be. Bob, what are you absolutely in this move trying to avoid? So you're helping them think through and clarify where things get to. Once you have had those conversations and they say, I would like to avoid floods. I would like to save as much money as I can. I have to be in the house by the end of the summer. And if I trade it off, I would probably trade off money for time, or they might say I might trade off time for money, whatever that is. Once you have come to those conclusions, then it's very natural, Bob, to go into the next phase, which is, would it be okay if I show you some new data as an options?
Well, and I think this is again where a lot of people are, and this is why we added what comes next. A lot of people said is, okay, I want to have this conversation about what's going to matter to you, what's your vision, how do you have these conversations? But many of those people on the fence may have been ghosting you for the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 months because they just weren't sure.
Mhm.
And so the question or the hack, right? What's the way that I actually get them to start a conversation with me so I can have these deep and meaningful conversations? So we're going to give you a hack that we are finding is working really well.
Mhm.
This is an incredibly simple question that you can send by text, that you can put in a voicemail, or that you can start a conversation with. Would it be okay if I showed you some new data and options? It may change a few things.
Well, specifically, I probably wouldn't just lead with that line. I'd probably send Bob a text or a voicemail and say, Hey, Bob, I just got off a call where we were discussing the most recent market updates that may be interesting for you. Would it be okay if I showed you some new data and options?
And here's what has been fascinating because, right, most people don't want to listen to the data. They don't want to listen to the market update. So what are you able to send them that's that hook?
Yep. And everybody on this call will be different. These are some examples of what we've been doing in case it's helpful. And for those of you on our team, if you're not using these resources as conversation starters to add value to the clients, please start.
What has been most fascinating, especially for me as a data guy, we've added about 20 new maps recently, and they're pretty, and they're from all over the city. The maps are a phenomenal way to have somebody to have a conversation because you can send them by text and they engage. People will engage with the maps. The other thing, especially for your high SCs, is you send them the trend reports, which we have on every single subdivision, and they look at data and they're like, I don't know what the data means. And you're able to get them on a phone call. And when you do that, you have the opportunity to go back to, right, what matters most to you.
And if you don't have access to this data, which is totally understandable, you can pull the HAR data and the MLS, the press releases that are available to you online to be able to send that to showcase the data piece of what we've just talked through.
And the pretty and the prettiness. The prettiness goes a long way, especially by text messages, getting you an opportunity to re-engage with people who may have been ghosting you for the last 6 to 9 months. Paige, I know you've been talking about this for a while.
Yep.
Talk about it yet one more
Yep,
time
yep,
and
yep. For
why
those
this
of you,
matters.
I love Bold. For those of you on our team, and even if you're not, this is available to anybody. It is broker agnostic. Bold is a phenomenal way to take time to jumpstart your business. It is uncomfortable. It is the chance to get uncomfortable with growth. But the outcomes, I promise you, will be worth it, and you will be with people that are on the same journey as you, which is building your pipeline for the rest of the year. And it's the best resource we can point you to do that right now.
Huge shout out for Ruby in the last 7 days already has 93 contacts. Absolutely
Woo!
amazing.
Ruby, that's awesome. All right, we are here almost early on the longest day of the year, Bob.
So our next webinar is July 10th. Again, as Paige said, she was featured on KHOU this week talking about first-time homebuyers and homebuyer tips. On July 10th, she's going to go into more details and practices with tactical tips on how you're able to help first-time home buyers July 10th at 8:30. Thank you. Have a
Have a
great
great
Friday.
weekend. Bye, guys.